Good day, good evening, good morning to everyone. It's 1 o'clock. I think we will start our event. As often for the webinars like this one, we will be recording and also posting the recording later on. So this is to notify all participants that we are now recording the event. But let me start by introducing myself. My name is Monika Stankiewicz. I'm Executive Secretary of the Minamata Convention. And I would like to warmly welcome everyone to this event. This is information session dedicated to the proposals to amend Annex A of the Minamata Convention on Mercury added products and Annex B of the Convention on manufacturing processes in which mercury or mercury compounds are used. This session is organized as part of Season 2 of the Minamata Online, the series of virtual events organized by the Secretariat together with partners dedicated to all involved or wishing to be involved in the implementation of the Convention. With Season 2, we offer, among others, a number of events to help parties and stakeholders to prepare for the upcoming 4th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. As many of you know, Prop 4 will be held in 2 parts. The first online segment will be held on 1st to 5th November this year, and the resumed meeting is planned for March next year in Bali, Indonesia. According to the Minamata Convention text, amendments to the Convention, including its annexes, may be proposed by any party. During this year, the Secretariat has received 3 proposals to amend Annexes A and B of the Convention from the European Union, from the Africa region, and from Canada and Switzerland. And I would like to thank all the governments that have been involved in preparing and submitting the proposals for your initiative and commitment. And today we have an opportunity to hear from the sponsors or co-sponsors about their proposals. So thus maybe it's a good now timing for me to welcome our panelists for today. We have Ms. Annetta Williams from the Directorate General for Environment from the European Commission. We have Ms. Liliane Radriano Menjanahare from the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development of Madagascar, and Ms. Jamie Neal from the Environment and Climate Change Canada, the Department of the Canadian Government. From the Secretariat side, my colleagues Eisaku and Claudia will provide a short overview of how an amendment to Convention is done, what the Annexes A and B of the Convention are about, and also brief information about the recently finalized intersessional work of the expert group on the review of the Annexes. But before I hand over to my colleagues, let me also take this opportunity to congratulate and thank 7 new countries that have joined the Minamata Convention during this year and have become party to it: Italy, Cameroon, Burundi, Central African Republic, Cambodia, Bahrain, and Zimbabwe. And we have now 133 parties, and with this rate of ratification or accession to our instrument, we can be quite hopeful that the Convention can become a universal instrument. And last but not least, let me also mention that the Secretariat has recently launched a fresh and new website of the Convention, and you can find this and other information about the Convention there. But without further ado, I would like now to hand over to Claudia and wish everyone a good and fruitful event. Thank you so much. Over to you, Claudia.
Thank you very much, Monika. If I may ask Shariful just to put up a slide of an overview of today's session. And just to recognize that we have 1 panelist outstanding, and we are just ensuring that Liliane can join us as well. But this is today's program. We will have in this opening, we will give you the information Monika just outlined, and thereafter the focus of this meeting really is on the 3 proposals. And thereafter will be a time, quite a sizable amount of time, for discussion and questions for clarification or otherwise. So please keep those in mind as we listen to the 3 proposals. May I also just draw your attention to the fact that the session is recorded and will be made available later. So should you need to leave earlier than expected, you can refer back to the recording, or if you would like to make it available to colleagues as well, the recording will be posted on our website. And also for your use, of course, is the chat function. If you wish to already start recording questions or queries, some of them might come in the presentations of the proposals, as you may want to listen to them there. But otherwise, please also feel completely free to raise questions or queries in the chat as well. And I and my colleagues will be monitoring that. And lastly, there is actually also a live stream of this event. So should anybody have any difficulty at all with this, we hope that that as a second channel of communication will help as well. But with that, that's the housekeeping. I will take you through the program today. Let me just begin by going to the next slide. And I trust I can see the slide. I trust others can see it too, because I see a comment from one person that they cannot. But I can see the slide perfectly, so I hope I'm not the only one. If anybody could maybe just write into the chat whether they have the same problem or not, or so, then we would. Okay, at least, thank you. So let me proceed just with 2 very short slides, because the amendments to a convention are well defined and outlined in the text of the convention. And so I just want to use this small opportunity just to refer you to that, which is that amendments to the convention are described in Article 26. And we've projected here the first 2 paragraphs of that article. There are more, of course, than 2 articles, 2 paragraphs. But most importantly is that an amendment can be proposed by a party, that an amendment that is being proposed would be discussed at a meeting of the Conference of the Parties, but at that meeting it would have to have been notified at least 6 months before. And so the Convention Secretariat is obliged to bring any amendment notifications to the attention of parties and also the depository well in advance of the beginning of the meeting, as of course to consider any amendments is an important task and needs time and preparation. And so we are very happy to say that the proposals reached the Secretariat well in time to be able to make the 6 months deadline, and even a couple of days to spare, and all of these proposals were communicated on the 30th of April. And as Monica outlined, it is 3 proposals, and we shall hear in greater detail from each of the proponents right afterwards. I also just want to draw attention to the fact that there is an Article 27, which specifically speaks about adoption and amendments of annexes as well. So just to draw your attention to that. And with the bracket, or with the overview of what the convention provides, I would like to, on the next slide, simply make a link to another part of the convention, namely Articles 4 and Articles 5 that underlie, of course, or that are behind which, of course, Annexes A and B are, namely the Article 4 mercury added products and the Article 5 manufacturing processes in which mercury or mercury compounds are used. And in these particular articles, again, we've just highlighted very specific paragraphs because the convention makes provision no later than 5 years after the entry into force to review these specific annexes. It is in Article 4, it would be the paragraph 7, and in Article 5, it's the paragraph 10. So there is provision being made for a review of the annexes and that such a process can be put in place. And here I will hand over to my colleague Esaku, who, at least all of those that have been following the review of Annexes A and B very closely know very well the enormous work that has gone into that review. But just to make the link here between, on the one hand, the Articles 26, 27, and on the other hand, the Articles 4 and 5, and their specific provisions for review, and also what information would need to be submitted for such review. With that, Esaku, may I hand over to you? Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. And before going into the review issues, I'd like to briefly explain what we are talking about, what are Annexes A and B. And so if we can go to the next slide, Annex A is about mercury-added products. It is referred to in Article 4 of the Convention. It has three components. It starts with a text explaining the exclusions, products essential for civil protection, military use, and so on and so forth. And Part 1 lists products of which manufacture, import, and export are to be phased out by 2020. Batteries, switches, lamps, cosmetics, pesticides, biocides, tropical antiseptics, and measuring devices. As you see in the screen, it includes some technical description on types of products, mercury contents, and so on. Part 2 is for measures other than the phase out of manufacturing, import, and export, and it currently has one product, dental amalgam. Annex B, next slide, is about manufacturing processes in which mercury or mercury compounds are used. It is referred to in Article 5 of the Convention. There's two parts. Part 1, listing processes to be phased out, and Part 2, describing measures to be taken to restrict the use of mercury on three types of industrial processes. And next slide is about the review process in intersessional work that Claudia referred to. COP3 established an ad hoc group of experts on the review of Annex A and B. COP called for submissions from parties and others of information on the use of mercury in products and processes and the availability, technical and economic feasibility, and environmental health risks and benefits of non-mercury alternatives. The ad hoc group, co-chaired by Mr. Darren Byrne of Ireland and Ms. Gwenetta Fordis of Guyana, was requested to enhance and organize the submitted information. The report summarizing the information and an enhanced and organized compilation of information have been posted on the Convention website and will also be made available as a COP4 documents. With this, I hand this back to Claudia.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Esaku. And with that very brief background, because there are very many knowledgeable persons online today that have followed this process closely, that have followed the entire convention process closely, I would like to, in fact, immediately turn over to the first proponent and invite Ms. Aneta Willems from the European Union to kindly present the proposal. So, Shariful, just there's just one small slide that would have just summarized. I don't know if it's visible. Otherwise, Aneta, please let me hand over to you, and we are in your hands. Thank you very much.
Good day to everybody. It's not yet visible, so maybe it will come up during the time that I will be speaking, as we don't really have any PowerPoint presentation. First of all, welcome to everybody. A good day or evening to everybody, and many thanks to the Executive Secretary and the colleagues from the Secretariat of the Convention for organizing this online information session on the amendment of the proposals to the Annexes A and B to the Minamata Convention regarding mercury-added products and processes that still use the mercury. And today I have the pleasure to present these proposals of the European Union. My name is Aneta Willems, and I'm heading the unit in Directorate General of for the Environment of the European Commission. So this is the executive arm of the European Union. Responsible for my unit is responsible for the mercury policies. And with me, there are also experts that participated in the expert groups works, Jenny Green, Darren Byrne, and Sven Hagemann. And they also will be available to answer your questions, if any. So in the EU, the recently adopted zero pollution strategy aims at achieving clean and non-toxic environment, and actions that are focused on elimination of harmful substances and their substitution with safe chemicals are also at the core of the EU chemical strategy. So the importance of the issues that we are tackling under the Minamata Convention also gain the much more political importance in the European Union. However, the fact is that the use of mercury in products and manufacturing processes still remains significant in the EU and overall globally, and we see this as an opportunity to further reduce such international use in line with the objectives set in the Article 1 of the Convention, so to protect human health and environment from anthropogenic emissions and releases of mercury and mercury compounds. And as for the process, so in our current reality, the EU particularly thanks the Minamata Secretariat for the continued efforts regarding the review of these annexes, specifically concerning the establishment and organization of the ad hoc group of experts compiling the submission from parties for the consideration by the ad hoc group of experts and communicating the text of the proposed amendments to the parties in view of COP4. We recognize and fully acknowledge that this process has been a challenging one considering the COVID-19 pandemic, and moreover congratulate all parties and Secretariat on finalizing this expert group report, also which includes a large amount of background technical information. So as already explained, we are acting under Articles 4.7 and 5.9 of the Minamata Convention, that any party may submit a proposal to the Secretariat, as was said by the Executive Secretary. And regarding in this process, regarding dental amalgam, the European Union provided on 31st August 2020 already technical and economic information. And in addition, we transmitted in March 2021 the information concerning a number of mercury-added products and processes and their technically and economically feasible mercury-free alternatives. Based on the information provided in those submissions, the EU proposes for adoption at COP4 amendments of Annexes A and B in accordance with Article 27 of the Minamata Convention. The full text of the European Union's proposal to be considered by the Conference of the Parties at its fourth meeting is available under the reference MC/COP4/2021/27 dated 30th April of this year. So the EU proposal consists of three parts and includes proposed amendments to, first of all, Annex A Part 1 on products, Annex A Part 2, which concerns dental amalgam, and Annex B Part 1 on processes using mercury. I will see if we already, so we still cannot see the text, but if you have our proposal, is it coming? If you have our proposal in front of you, as I stated, you will see that the summary of the tables there and proposed amendments in Part 1 concerning the mercury-added products that includes button zinc silver oxide batteries and button zinc air batteries. The remaining halophosphate phospholinear fluorescent lamps, so LFLs. So these were the content of less than 10 milligram per lamp. The non-electronic measuring devices, including strain gauges and tensiometers. The electrical and electronic measuring devices, including melt pressure transductors, transmitters, and sensors, and mercury vacuum pumps, as well as, and this is a completely new thing, polyurethane, including canisters for the application of polyurethane. And in consideration of these proposals, the EU took into consideration all available information for each of these products, showing that the technical and economically feasible mercury-free alternatives exist. And this is the really main reason of the proposal. The products proposed to be phased out are the part of the product categories, for example, lamps and electronic and electrical equipment, which still account for significant mercury use globally. And the proposed phase-out date assumes, so you see 2023 in our proposal, and this is calculated on all the required deadlines for further communication by the depositor, etc. How we calculate it, taking into consideration that the COP4 decision, part 2, will take place in March 2022. So this is a bit of a moving target for us, depending when finally the part 2 meeting, when these issues will be negotiated, will take place. So the second part of the proposal of the EU is to amend Annex 1, Part 2, and the proposed amendment to that annex, so Annex 8, Part 2, concerns the use of mercury in dental amalgam, which still unfortunately remains another significant source of international mercury use, emissions, and releases. And available information suggests that mercury-free alternatives to dental amalgam exist, and thus further restrictions on the use of dental amalgam should be supported under the convention. The European Union's proposal, therefore contains complementary text to be added to the existing entry, whereby parties shall by 1st January 2024 first of all, provide the dental amalgam that the dental amalgam is only used in pre-dosed encapsulated form, prohibit the use of mercury in bulk form by dental practitioners. This is the second point. Third point, to ensure that operators of dental facilities in which dental amalgam is used or dental amalgam fillings or teeth containing such fillings are removed, equip their facilities with amalgam separators. And the fourth point is to no longer allow the use of dental amalgam for deciduous teeth and vulnerable populations, meaning children and pregnant or breastfeeding women, except when deemed strictly necessary by the dental practitioner. This is a completely new point that would be added to the annex. And the proposal for the EU to amend Annex B, Part 1 on the process subject to Article 5, Paragraph 2, is the currently Annex B, Part 2 requires parties to take measures to phase down the use of mercury in the production of polyurethane, with the aim of a complete phase out within 10 years of entry into force of the convention, meaning 2027. In the context of the ad hoc expert group, information suggests, however, that mercury-free catalysts exist for the production of polyurethane and are already in use in a majority of the countries around the world. So the proposed amendment to Annex B, Part 1, therefore, consists of banning the production of polyurethane using mercury-containing catalysts earlier than 2027, and proposed phase-out date is 2023. Thank you very much for listening. And in addition, also, I would like to add that the EU is looking forward to continued dialogue and cooperation with all parties in the run-up to COP4, and of course at the COP4 itself. Thank you.
You're on mute.
I am mute. I did it. My apologies. I was thanking Anita for the presentation and would like to invite all to collect their comments or questions for afterwards once all of the presentations have been completed. We would be turning now to Africa, to Liliane Rand-Riano Menyana Hari, but she is just having some difficulty getting online. May I therefore skip ahead to Jamie Knill, if that would be okay, Jamie, to invite you to present the proposal as put forward by Canada and Switzerland. If that is okay with you, thank you very much. And over to you, please.
Thanks, Claudia. So I believe I have some slides to share here. So I'll just, while we're waiting for those, I'll say good morning, afternoon, and good evening to everybody. Thanks so much for hosting this event for the Secretariat. And as Claudia mentioned, I'm Jamie Knill. I work for the Ministry of Environment with the Government of Canada. And so today I'll present an overview of our proposal to amend Annex A, which we put forward jointly with Switzerland. So next slide, please. And before we kind of dig into the products that we've proposed, just wanted to give kind of a rationale for why we chose these products and what our thinking was in formulating this proposal. So we have proposed 4 products to add to Part 1 of Annex A. We do believe that these products are not widely used and have readily available alternatives. We also think that the chapeau above Part 1 of Annex A provides some flexibility to allow for any essential uses that might still remain. So our proposal is really largely rooted in Canada's experience with mercury added products. We have in Canada prohibited the manufacture and import of mercury added products through our products containing mercury regulations. These came into force in 2015. However, there are some limited exemptions in our domestic regulations for import and manufacture of products that have no available mercury-free alternatives. So the importers and manufacturers of the exempted products in Canada do need to report on the number of products that they've imported. The number of products that they have imported or manufactured. And the reports are due every 3 years. So we have a report from...
Yeah. Je suis dans le
Liliane, I am so happy to see you. Thank you very much. I'm glad you are here. Liliana, can you wait for one moment because Jamie is just presenting the one on Canada, so you can just take a moment and we will return to Africa right after that.
Hello, everybody. Excuse me.
We can't hear you, Liliana, if you're speaking.
We can't hear Liliana. Let me ask my colleagues to be in touch with Liliana. And my apologies, Jamie, but if you could continue, we will ensure we get Liliana online in a minute. Thank you.
Yes, well, this is certainly a new challenge that we've all had to deal with COVID happening. So where did I leave off? Okay, so the products that were proposed to add to Annex A in Canada, they're either already prohibited or are no longer manufactured or imported, according to the reports that we received from 2016 and 2019. We also considered the work of the intersessional group. So as Asaku said, there were a number of information sessions and as well compilations and a final report that was produced by this intersessional expert group on products and processes. We found these particularly helpful, especially the information that was made available on the uses, current uses and availability of mercury-free alternatives. And although we don't believe that the products we propose are widely used, I'll note again the chapeau above part 1 of Annex A that has exclusions for essential uses. So these would be products used for civil protection and military uses, products for research, calibration of instrumentation, and for use as reference standard, as well as for where no feasible mercury-free alternative for replacement is available for switches, relays, CCFLs, and EEFLs for electronic displays and measuring devices. On the issue of timing, we recalled that this list of products was last discussed in 2013 during the treaty negotiations, and that we're now in 2021. Things have changed. We've had technological advances. As well, we also noted that the convention mandates a review of the annexes no later than 5 years after entry into force. So we do feel that this is a good time to begin these discussions on considering adding additional products. So next slide, please. Perfect, thanks. So here we have the list of the 4 products we've proposed. There's counterbalancing devices, including tire balancers and wheel weights, photographic film and paper, propellant for satellites and spacecraft, as well as very high accuracy capacitance and loss measuring bridges and high frequency radio frequency switches and relays in monitoring and control instruments with a maximum mercury content of 20 milligrams per bridge, switch, or relay. So for each of these, we proposed a phased out date of 2025, and this date was chosen to allow parties sufficient time to implement any necessary control measures. With that, I will move to the next slide, please. Great. So briefly just touch on each product we proposed a little bit more in detail. So beginning with counterbalancing devices, including tire balancers and wheel weights, these are used to eliminate uneven tire wear. So this makes cars, trucks, vehicles a bit more efficient in terms of fuel economy. However, they do contain a fairly large amount of mercury. And these products have already been prohibited in Canada, and many other parties have also prohibited their use. Okay, next slide, please. So here we have just some images of the alternatives. They are available for use. So we have similar products like the bolt-on types that we see. There's other compounds that can be added to tires, and we also have adhesive weight or clip-on weights. And these are available. They're comparatively priced, and they perform similarly or better. And they're all less toxic than the mercury. Okay, next slide, please. So our second product that we'd like to list is the photographic film and paper. In the past, we've had trace amounts of mercury being added to these types of products just to help with the image processing process. Next slide. But based on our domestic regulations, we do currently have exemptions for manufacture and import of these. There was really, we didn't see these, however, being imported or manufactured in Canada. So it doesn't really appear to be a use, and there are many alternatives that are available since the 1970s. There's mercury-free papers and films. As well, we now have digital photography, and printing has really changed over the years. So there's not really a need to have this mercury-containing papers or films. Okay, next slide, please. So here we have mercury as a propellant for satellites and spacecraft. We understand that it was first kind of conceptualized in the 1960s by NASA to use mercury in this way. However, they stopped its use in the 1970s due to health and safety concerns. We've also noted that in recent years, there's been a lot of global interest in launching more satellites for communication purposes, for research, for surveillance, as well as space tourism. You just have to look at, SpaceX or Virgin Galactic or Amazon to understand that the number of things that we're launching into space is increasing significantly. So with this idea, we became aware that there was a proposal from a company to begin using mercury again as a propellant for satellite launches. And with this research, we found that some scientists had done some excellent modeling to figure out, okay, if this were used, where would the mercury kind of fall out? How much mercury would there be? So that's what that kind of globe on the bottom of the slide shows. And you can see that the red areas are where there would be more mercury deposition as a result of the satellite launches, and a large portion of that is over Canada. So that's why we have kind of a concern if this is the direction that things are going to be going. Okay, next slide. So for many years, we've used non-mercury alternatives, and this has included xenon, krypton, argon, neon, helium, hydrogen iodine, and many others. Or we will note that with the increasing cost of xenon, mercury is becoming more attractive as an option to use as a propellant. So it's important from our perspective that this really isn't even considered as an option moving forward. It just doesn't seem like a very good idea to us. Okay, next slide, please. And so our last products that we propose to add is these very high accuracy capacitance and loss measurement bridges and high frequency radio switches and relays in monitoring and control instruments with a maximum mercury content of 20 milligrams per bridge, switch, or relay. As you know, Annex A to the convention already requires parties to phase out these products, but does exempt these kind of specialized switches and relays. So our proposal would be to remove this remaining exemption so that switches and relays would be completely prohibited under the convention. So next slide, please. I will note that these really specialized high frequency radio switches and relays are allowed under our domestic products containing mercury regulations, but we haven't seen them being used or imported or manufactured in Canada. And in discussions with our regulatory colleagues, they found that this kind of wording was just introduced when the regulations were drafted in the early 2010s to align with the laws of other jurisdictions at the time. Again, we really don't see this exemption being used in Canada. In cases where there may be a legitimate and highly specialized need for these switches and relays, we think that this would kind of fall under the chapeau above Part 1 of Annexes, specifically paragraph C. So that's, I guess, where I will leave it today. Thanks very much for listening, and we look forward to discussing this further with anybody who's interested.
Thank you so very much, Jamie. Given the number of people that we have online and also others that are trying to follow or are following on the live stream, I can assure you that there's much interest in the work of the reviews and also in these proposals. So I'm sure there'll be many questions coming, and thank you very much for your very clear presentation in this regard. Let us try to turn to Liliane now. Liliane, I would recommend that perhaps not to use the video, but only the audio, and we shall project the slides. So if I may hand over to you, please, for the third proposal, the proposal from Africa. Over to you, Liliane.
Yes. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Claudia, to giving me the floor. We are here now to see the African region amendment to Annex A for the Minamata Convention on Mercury. Next slide, please. In Africa, 73 countries are party in the Minamata Convention, and for the proposal from Africa, 2 parts of proposal are proposed. First one concerning the lightning. For Annex A, Part 1, 3 entries are proposed, and from the Annex A, Part 2, alternative text is proposed for the dental amalgam. Next slide, please. Concerning the amendment proposal to Annex A, Part 1, concerning the lightning. Next, please. We have 3 categories of fluorescent lamps in Annex A to the Minamata Convention. The first one is the compact fluorescent lamps as a CFLEI integral ballast. The second one, the linear fluorescent lamps, and the third one is the cold cathode and external electrode fluorescent lamps as CCFL and EEFL. Next, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. For the African amendment proposes to phase out fluorescent lamps, then the integrally ballasted CFLA by the end of 2024, the linear fluorescent lamp 2025, and the CCFL and EEFL by the end of 2024. Why this date? Because we should have time to implement the use of these products, and to put also the policy for these. So we need 2 or 3 years to implement the to phase out these products. Next slide, please. Next. Line in the African government policy. Many governments across Africa are moving to phase out CFL and CFL through energy efficient policy measures. Then, 22 countries in those energy efficient light and appliances harmonized lightning performance standards for SADC and EAC. And South Africa, Ivory Coast, and Kenya are all updating national lighting regulations, phase out CFL, and transitioning mercury-free LED. Burkina Faso, Gabon, and many others have strategies to support energy efficiency measures under the national energy policy, and even the UNEP's United for Efficiency published the model lightning regulations in February 2021 to propose the phase out of all CFCs and LFL January 2025. Next slide, please. Why African region would like to phase out these why the reason to phase out these products? Because African are import all fluorescent lightning. Fluorescent lightning are not domestic manufacturing in Africa. Africa have to deal with toxic mercury fluorescent lamps at the end of life. A hazard waste in Africa, there is a hazard waste problem. Africa is moving forward LED lightning because it's highly cost effective, payback period of 5 to 11 months, and the LED lamp, LED lamp assembly, LED lamp are assembly and manufacturing already in Africa. New business, it creates new businesses investing in product line for LED lamps. For example, in Zambia, in Rwanda, in Mozambique, in South Africa, and so more country in Africa. Next slide, please. Here, the LED lamps improves livelihoods in rural areas. Today, we know that all portable solar lanterns are based on LED lighting technology, and high efficiency and durability of LED technology allows for better quality light that lasts longer and is less expensive nowadays. Then, advanced in LED technology makes energy more affordable, and LED lamps are highly cost effective for on-grid households nowadays. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Even in the equity and anti-dumping, African countries are at risk to becoming dumping ground for mercury-containing fluorescent lamps that no longer have a viable market in the OECD. You know that today, 1 September 2021, the European Union phased out CFL lamps and all T12 LFL lamps. End of life hazardous lamps managing remain a major concern in Africa, including waste separation, collection, transport, mercury, recovery, and disposal. And nowadays, CLAD lamps are cost-effective, mercury-free, energy-efficient alternative exist now. So it's time to act now to move for LED lamps. Last week, as we see that a strong statement about pollution from fluorescent lightning is appeared by the CEO. Adopting the African Lightning Amendment at COPA is the ideal response. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. What are the global benefits of the African Amendment? The Clean Lightning Coalition calculated the benefits of the African Lightning Amendment at COP4. First of all, the African amendment for the lightning eliminates 232 tons of mercury pollution from the environment and reduce global electricity use by 3% and avoid 3.5 gigatons of CO2 emissions cumulatively between 2025 to 2060, equivalent to getting all passenger cars globally off the road for the whole year. Next slide, please. What are reasons to phase out CFL and LFL? You know that CFL and LFL, they are both containing mercury and inefficient and are more expensive on a life cycle cost basis compared by LED. Mercury-free LED retrofit are available with the full categories nowadays, and LED retrofits are highly cost-effective nowadays for general service LED. They are often less expensive than CFLs, LED tubes, and many African countries are phasing out fluorescent technology based on energy saving and cost. Africa has many new local manufacturing companies producing LED lamps, and most fluorescent bulbs are not disposed of safety at the end of life, creating hazardous electronic waste. LEDs are e-waste, but not hazardous. Then risk that supplier will dump more mercury lighting in Africa as fluorescent lamps are phased out in the OECD. And finally, LED continues to improve, getting less expensive and more efficient each year. Next slide, please. And now we are seeing the reasons to phase out CCFL and EFL. CCFL and EFL are an old technology 10, 20 years ago. And in the market, these products were replaced by LED backlit displays starting in 2008. Today, LED units have completely replaced CCFL and EEFL, and placing parts in Annex A will enable end user to continue using old monitors, but is to be a very small, not existent market. LED replacements for CCL and EEFL exist today. We see here the photo of CCFL old technology and the LED backlit unit for the modern technology. Next slide, please. Concerning the amendment of total amalgam, the African group proposed to delete the heading and the current text in the second column of Annex A Part 2 and replace as text as following. In 2023, each party to the Minamata Convention on Mercury shall issue a communication recommending the only non-mercury dental filling materials materials be used in children and in women of childbirth age. And in 2025, each party to the Minamata Convention shall set out a national plan concerning the measures to phase out dental amalgam, and it should be published and shared in the internet. And in 2027, the manufacture and import of amalgam shall cease to account for exception and accommodate the transition to mercury-free dentistry. Parties may permit domestic sales inside their country for 2 more years. And finally, in 2029, domestic sales of amalgam inside countries as stipulated point 3 above shall also cease. Next slide, please. For the rationale behind dental amalgam proposal, measures are introduced over years, allowing for graduate transition. For the awareness, high percentage of dentists know how to use alternatives and are practicing minimum invasive dentistry. And mercury-free alternatives have become much less expensive nowadays and are the cost-effective alternative now for patients compared to dental amalgam. And finally, African countries want to reduce mercury waste, including from the dental sector, as well as a crucial lack of facilities to treat mercury waste. So you see in the slide, the first picture is for dental amalgam, and the other one is for the mercury-free dentistry. Next slide, please. So nowadays, back to dental amalgam at COP4. There is a change in many African countries where people are going to the dentist and treat early dental caries and avoid the need for filling completely. And for the alternatives, significant awareness has been raised on the availability of mercury-free alternatives like glass ionomer cement, which has bacteriostatic power through fluoride released to prevent dental caries. So we know that we have many advantages to use alternatives of dental amalgam instead of using dental amalgam. Next slide, please. So this slide is just showing us the information on products, summary of Annex A and B review. So we see here that lamps, we have more information on using lamps. The free mercury-free alternatives are available for lamps, and there is feasibility of alternatives that the environmental and health risk of alternatives also it's risk for the using the fluorescent lamp that using the LED lamps is better than using the other one. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Excuse me. Can you come back? Oh, yes, excuse me. Summary for the information on processes. For the other processes using mercury as electrodes, you see that there is information on using it, availability of free mercury-free processes, and the feasibility of mercury-free processes exists, like the alternatives of amalgam, dental amalgam. So that's end my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. Next, please. Thank you very much for your attention. I'll feel free to have your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liliana. We could hear you very well, so thank you also for that. And I just want to thank all the presenters. There is a lot of information in your presentations. There's, of course, a lot of information in the proposals, because just to recall that each proponent put forward the actual proposal, the text proposal, for the article, for the annexes A and B, where they propose some changes or some updates or some revisions or some amendments, and also gave in the Annex 2 of that communication that was sent out by the Executive Secretary a detailed technical or technical details to support the proposal. But we are here today for another half an hour to be able to engage, to allow you to engage as much as possible with the proponents, and also for them to receive your questions or your clarifications. And so you may remember or may recall that we asked for questions ahead of time if proponents or if anybody had questions already ahead of time, and we have received one question ahead of time, and I would like to call on Michael Scholand in a moment just to put forward his question, and then there's a lot of traffic already in the chat, and we will go to those questions. I would like to propose that we concentrate the questions on the items that the proponents are presenting, so that we will take the questions first that directly relate to any of the proposals, so that you can hear their responses. Here and there are some other questions that are more about the process, and if time permitting, I will return to that as well, or we will make that information available afterwards. There are also, of course, a couple of questions that might not directly link to this work or these proposals, but if we do not have time to get to that, because we would like to ensure that the proposals get as much time as possible here, we shall revert back to you afterwards on any other questions. So if that is agreeable with you, and before I turn to the actual question, I do want to just invite Roger Barrault, who also just to complete the Africa proposal presentation. Roger, you would like to say something also on behalf of the Africa region, so please feel free to do so now. And after that, we will turn to the questions. Roger, over to you. Can you hear me, Roger? You look muted. Can we unmute you? Just 1 second while we try to do that, Roger. Can you hear me, Roger? Roger, if you are speaking, I cannot hear you.
Do you hear me?
Now I can hear you, maybe a little louder.
Okay, thank you, Claudia.
Roger, great.
Can I speak?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of African region, we have a statement of amendment to Annex A of the Minamata Convention. We, the country from the Africa region, have taken the first step to have a global phase out of all mercury-containing lighting. We encourage you all to join our effort by agreeing to a short-term phase-out date for mercury-containing lamps during the next conference of parties. During this upcoming opportunity to revise the list of mercury-containing products, we are of the view that all mercury-containing fluorescent lamps should be included in this list, paving the way for a global transition to cost-effective and equivalent toxic-free, energy-efficient LED lighting. This is one of many steps that Africa is taking towards making mercury history. There is now no economic or technical justification to keep mercury-containing fluorescent lamps in the market as toxic-free LED alternatives have become available, increasingly more competitive and easier to retrofit into existing fixtures. Fluorescent lighting is a source of toxic mercury that endanger human health and the environment, and we recognize that now is the right time to advocate for greener products that do not introduce mercury into our homes, environment, and business. Over the last 2 years, significant progress has been made in the development of quality and performance standards for lighting products across many African countries, and we want to build on this progress through achieving global regulation that should complement our efforts at the regional level. At the same time, compliance to the provision set up through Article 13 of the Minamata Convention should be the option to allow the region to reach the objective of the phase down of mercury-containing lighting in short time. In addition, we are on the opinion that measures should be taken by parties to phase down the use of dental amalgam to have a phase out in 2029. The rationale for this gradual phase out is based on the fact that mercury-free alternatives have become much less expensive and are a cost-effective alternative now for patients compared to dental amalgam. To allow for a gradual transition, the measure could be introduced over the years and at the same time creating awareness so an event higher percentage of dentists know that how to use alternatives and are practicing minimally invasive dentistry. As you will all recall, the proposal of gradual phase out is not a new proposal of the continent. We introduced our intention during the last COP and wish to bring it to conclusion at the upcoming COP. The proposal for the African continent aligns with many country regulations and policies across all the regions of the globe, and it should no longer suffer from discussion at the coming COP to merit a favorable decision. Our priorities in the African region are, among others, to protect the health, economic, and environmental interests of the people of Africa and across the globe. By transitioning to toxic-free energy-efficient lighting and a phase-out of dental amalgam, the region will enjoy improvement in energy security and economic development, as well as the will of country to reduce mercury waste coming from these sectors, and there is a crucial lack of facilities to treat mercury waste in environmentally safe manner. Moreover, as countries around the world begin to eliminate fluorescent lighting from their market, it's important to ensure that those without such regulation do not become dumping grounds for fluorescent lighting products. In addition, no toxic alternatives such as light-emitting diode lighting represent an opportunity for business on the African continent, and we urge the private sector to play a transparent role in the production and trade of these products, namely dental amalgam and lamps. Transition to mercury-free alternative will have positive environmental, health, and socio-economic repercussions for the continent, in addition to getting rid of the negative inequalities associated with the use of products that are harmful to public health and the environment. All the parties of the convention will discuss the proposed amendments during the regional meeting over the next 6 months and take up both issues of the next conference of parties. We look forward to working with our counterparts from around the world to make Mercury history, and we are available for online bilateral discussion with other regional groups. Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you very much, Roger. That was clear. Thank you very much. I would like to turn to the questions that we have been receiving. And as mentioned, I would like to try to first collect the questions that are directly to the proponents about the proposals, to use this time as wisely as possible. And because we had offered the opportunity to send questions also ahead of time, and one person made use of that, I would like to call on Michael Scholand, if you would like to shortly outline your question, please, as it related to a specific proposal. Michael, could you unmute yourself and ask the question?
Yep. Thank you.
Please, over to you.
Can you hear me, Claudia? Is that okay? Great. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for letting me ask this question. It's Mike Scholand here from the Clean Lighting Coalition. And I have a question for Ms. Williams from the European Commission. As you know, today the European Commission's eco-design regulation for lighting takes effect, comes into force, and it's phasing out CFLI and T12 linear fluorescent lamps, as Lillian told us. And in addition to that, 3 months ago, the European Commission proposed to phase out all general purpose fluorescent lighting over the next 2 years under the RoHS directive, the Restriction of Hazardous Substances. So taking together, eco-design and RoHS are going to bring significant public health, economic, and environmental benefits to EU citizens. However, what we heard today, the EU's lighting proposal to Minamata only proposes to remove halophosphate fluorescent lamps. Halophosphate is a lamp type that was phased out of Europe 10 years ago under the Eco-Design Measure 245/2009. It's a very old technology. And I wondered, why isn't Europe proposing something more ambitious on fluorescent lighting? Is it perhaps that European companies want to keep exporting these old light bulbs to other parts of the world? And I was going to ask, this is maybe going a bit far, given the direction of lighting policy in Brussels, would the EU consider supporting the African region's lighting amendment instead, since the African proposal is much better aligned with the treatment of fluorescent lighting in Europe? Thank you.
That's on me. So Claudia, if it's okay, I will go straight to answering. Thank you very much for your question. However, I cannot agree with the tone of any conspiracy theories or anything of EU wanting to do something this way in order to use other countries for their profits, as I consider this unfair, and we are also not in the negotiating mode here. We are here to explain why we are proposing what we are proposing. And you have to understand that the European Union, as the Rio, with 27 member states and the extensive bulk of legislation, has quite complicated legal system. The important point of our proposal is that the timing and the procedures, both of the convention of when we were supposed to supply the convention with our proposal, and also the advancement of the negotiations and approval by all member states of the EU of certain amendments to the RoHS directive. So in this particular timing, in our proposal, we stated things that were decided in the EU. So our legislation was confirmed, and all member states that also are parties, most of them, to the Minamata Convention. We cannot go into paralegal legal regimes. So what we have proposed is not a limiting factor to what will be our negotiating position as the EU 27 member states and the European Commission at the COP self. So please don't take it like that. What we have proposed is where we had absolute certainty that the whole bloc can stand behind it and have no problems with it. In the same time, ROC's exemptions are the moving target. Like I said before, we are working with the estimation in our heads that COP2, at which the COP4 part 2, at which we will be negotiating these annexes, will take place in March 2022. However, this is to be seen. And up till then, we are obviously observing all the development in the policies on hazardous chemicals, hazardous substances that are influencing the extent to which we are moving at the EU, and what we can approve, all of us. So this is the only thing that you know, if that means for you that we are not ambitious enough, maybe it is like this, you know, at the proposal that was stated in March, April 2021. However, the year later, our negotiating position may be very different. But today we are not here convincing each other. This is not the purpose of this meeting. We are proposing here where we have scientific data, where we know that that the assessment of the environmental and socioeconomic elements is such that allows safe and responsible removal of certain products and processes from the list allowed in the world. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anita, for that. And it is indeed that something like a convention is an iterative process, and one has to go into certain steps of presenting the information. And so I would like to just absolutely recall that this is the first information session on the proposals, and it is a good opportunity to understand what the proponents are putting forward and their rationale behind it, their reasoning and their hopes. As it is our understanding that all proponents are wishing to make the work of the convention stronger, and in all levels and in all regions. Anita, if I may perhaps just direct one more question to you before I turn to some questions that have come to the Africa proposal. But Anita, you may have seen, you and your colleagues, there has been some dialogue on the side in the chat on polyurethane, and exactly the rationale for how the EU has put forward the process and the product. Would it be possible perhaps while there has been a discussion on the side, which I'm sure you may have looked at, would it be possible for the EU perhaps just to speak to this particular item a little bit more with clarity, to perhaps also answer some of the questions that I had seen? It was certainly the question that began with it was the one from Augustin Harte that he put out: is polyurethane a mercury added product? If not, how does it fit into the Annex A Part 1? And as I mentioned, there was some other conversation going on, but Anita, if that would be possible?
Yes, I'm also informed that there's another question in the chat concerning the tensiometers, and I will ask Sven Hagemann to answer that one. Also, the expert can continue, but when it comes to the polyurethane, and we now included it in products, and we also moved it to the phase out of the process. And for the information, the polyurethane in the formation of the polyurethane, mercury is used as a catalyst in the reaction between the polyol and the isocyanate component, where there are two canisters, and the mercury is the catalyst there. However, in the reaction, the mercury catalyst enables it stays in the product, so it remains present in the final polyurethane product. So that's why we decided to propose that not only the process, the industrial process should be banned, but also making it at home with the canisters bought basically at the do-it-yourself shops. That also exposes the human health and the environment to the presence of those residues of mercury that is used as a catalyst. I hope that answers the question. However, I will now ask Sven to step in and to take the other question as well.
Thank you, Aneta, and hello, everybody. I'd like to start with the polyurethane. I think Aneta has well described what the problem is with polyurethane products. The key question was whether or not these polyurethane products are mercury-added products. And we've heard that, well, we could regard them as such because mercury is a necessary component and ingredient of polyurethane, because it is added during the process, and the product, the final product, necessarily contains mercury, because otherwise this product, this polyurethane, wouldn't be polyurethane, because it's the catalyst that produced it, essentially. So it is well placed in the Annex 1, Annex A. And regarding the other question, that was the question whether or not tangiometers are already covered by the ban on manometers. Well, in principle, that is the case, but national authorities may look at this matter otherwise, because the tangiometers are not addressed explicitly in the Minamata Convention, and the manometers are only a part of these tangiometers. And it would be a good idea to explicitly include tangiometers, so that it is clear that tangiometers that contain mercury-added manometers are also covered by the convention, and so that this use of mercury-containing manometers within tangiometers will be phased out as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sven.
Thank you very much for that, and for watching the chat as well, and for already seeing, of course, the tangiometer question that was asked. I would like to also just note that there are a couple of questions on dental amalgam, but perhaps before we go there, could I maybe ask the question to Africa that was posed by Terrapon, where the question is about to make a clarification on the proposal. Does it mean all fluorescent lamps in Annex A Part 1 will be phased out by the new proposed deadline, and all FL with the limited content of mercury will be allowed to manufacture and export until the new proposed deadline? May I call on Lillian or so to reflect on that question? It is a question asked by Terrapon. Over to Lillian or her colleagues.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. For the deadline for the CFL and the CCFL, why the deadline is on 2024, because the alternatives of these mercury containing products are more existing, are already existing and easy to use nowadays. And why 2 years to phase out? Because country must establish a policy to implement these products. And for the LFL, it's more we need so much more time to phase out this, because it needs more time for the implementation of these products. And may I give my floor for my friend to add more explanation to Rachel.
Yes, thank you very much, Lilian. And thank you for the questions that have been asked. I wanted to just add something to the question that has been asked about the whether all fluorescent lamps in Annex A Part 1 will be phased out by the new proposed deadline, and all fluorescent lighting with the limited content of mercury will be allowed to manufacturing and export until the new proposed deadline. Yes, the answer is yes, and that's the reason why Africa is proposing to add 3 new entries, so that the existing ones stay in place and are effective until the new entries take effect. And because see, in future, and to avoid any potential confusion, a future COP can delete the 3 entries that are in there now, which set limits on mercury per lamp. That is after 2025. If that happens, then the new proposal that the African region is proposing then would be the one that would stay. I hope that clarifies the question that had been asked by about the fluorescent lamps.
Thank you very much, Rachel. There are a number of other items, and we are kind of close to the deadline, but if okay, I would like to highlight just one question. It actually does come back to the EU. There's a bit of discussion going on different aspects of dental amalgam, but there was a very specific question to the EU I'd just like to bring forward, which is, are the 4 items, it's asked by Hitoshi Yoshizaki from Japan, and the question posted at 1:57 asks, there are 4 items for action to be taken by 1st of January 24. Does this mean that all of the 4 actions should be taken, or that either or some of the 4 actions should be taken? Aneta, may I hand over to you?
Yeah, the answer is very simple. All 4 actions to be taken, they are not mutually exclusive. It's all to be taken at on 1st January 2024. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see some other questions that are partly answered in the chat, and I'm mindful that we're really just a minute away. I also note that there do not appear to be any questions to Jamie. So while I would have liked to have called on Jamie as well, there are no questions, maybe not yet, to the Canadian-Swiss proposal. And perhaps we would close off this session today, having recorded all the questions. We as Secretariat will also go through them. Again, we will also share them, of course, with the proponents, if in every which way, to ensure that they may know that as well. And if I could maybe just really encourage any further questions that you may have or any further items you would like to have some clarification on. This is a very important phase for the eventual decision on adopting any amendments to the convention, this sharing of information and clarification. So if there are any other questions that might come to you afterwards, feel free to forward them to the Secretariat and or directly to the contact persons of each of the proponents of each of the proposals as per the notification that was sent out. I'm sure they shall be happy to hear from you and to know which parts of the proposals are maybe not clear enough or are of interest for any other reason. I would just like to say there are also, or there was certainly at least one question that asks what happens once a proposal once an amendment is adopted, and we shall be happy to provide more information about that later as we go along in the process. So with that, just simply because we have taken our 90 minutes and they seem to have flown in no time, I would like to very much on behalf of the Secretariat thank the proponents for their availability today, for also their colleagues to be available here today, and for all of you to join us and to also contribute with your questions to make the convention and its processes richer and to share knowledge the way you have. And would like to simply invite you to carry on linking into Minamata Online in our upcoming events, and on the question of these proposals to be directly in contact with the contact persons and or the Secretariat as we walk the steps towards COP 4.1, the online segment in November, and then later the second segment as well. And just to reiterate that, as Monica Stankovic said at the beginning of our meeting, while we begin this process of the information exchange on the proposals now, the actual item of discussion of the amendments will only be opened as agenda items in the second segment. So there's quite a bit of time still for countries and others to prepare themselves, for parties to prepare themselves in their knowledge in this matter. With that, on behalf of all my colleagues in the Secretariat, many of whom you don't see, but that are behind the scenes to make this work, and also my thanks to Esaku always, and also on behalf of Monica, thank you very much for joining us today. We look forward to being in touch with you again, and take care and stay well. Bye-bye.